Ma'am, are you sure you want these two? Nobody else did.
Nadine Washington froze in the orphanage hallway. 48 hours after signing her divorce papers, $400 in her account, a uniform still smelling of the hospice ward. Ms. Whitaker, the white director, held a folder stamped "Do Not Recommend" in red ink. Behind her, two 7-year-old twins sat alone in a corner, reading, not playing, not even looking up.
I've shown you the easier children, Mrs. Washington. Why these two?
Every other child looked up when I came in. Those two didn't.
What do you mean?
Nadine's voice came out quiet, steady.
Because nobody chose me either.
All she knew was this. From today on, she'd love them with everything she had. 25 years later, those two children would put her name on every building in this city. 2 days earlier, Nadine sat in a lawyer's office on Peachtree Street. Her hands rested flat on the table, steady, the way she'd trained them to be after 16 years of holding dying patients. Across from her, Brandon wouldn't even look up. He had a new girlfriend now, 26 years old, 3 months pregnant. The lawyer slid the papers toward Nadine and cleared his throat like the awkwardness was hers to fix. "Mrs. Washington, your husband would like to expedite this. He's prepared to waive alimony if you sign today." Nadine looked at Brandon, the man she'd cooked for, the man she'd nursed through pneumonia in 1998, the man who'd held her hand at her mother's funeral. "Brandon, look at me." He didn't. "Brandon!" He finally raised his eyes, tired, embarrassed, but not sorry. "She can give me what you never could, Nadine. That's all. I don't hate you. I'm just done waiting." Nadine picked up the pen, signed her name on every line. 3 signatures. 11 years of marriage, done in 45 seconds. She walked out of that office and didn't cry until she got home. The apartment was half empty already. Brandon had taken the couch, the TV, the wedding photos. What was left fit in 3 corners, a kitchen table, 1 pot, a stack of paperback books, and a closed door at the end of the hall. 8 years ago, Nadine had painted that room pale yellow. She'd bought a crib, a rocking chair, a small bookshelf shaped like a tree. She was 31, and she believed. Then came the fibroids, the surgery, the doctor's voice, soft and rehearsed. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Washington. We had to remove more than we hoped." She'd kept the yellow room anyway, for 8 years. Every time Brandon asked her to clear it out, she'd say, "Next month, next month, next month." Tonight, she stood in front of that door, and for the first time in 8 years, she closed it. Hard. She didn't sleep. She made tea at 2 a.m. and sat at the kitchen table and let her mind go back. She was 5 years old in Mississippi. Her parents were both school teachers. They had 2 daughters, Nadine and her little sister Tasha. Tasha was 2, round-cheeked, easy to love. One August morning, her mother packed Nadine's clothes into a brown suitcase, put her on a Greyhound bus to Atlanta, told her grandmother on the platform, "It's better for her. The schools here are better." The schools were the same. That wasn't why. Nadine learned the real reason at 12 when she overheard her grandmother on the phone. They couldn't afford both, so they kept the pretty one. She grew up with her grandparents. They were kind. They were old. They were tired. Tasha visited every summer, dressed in new clothes, kissed on the forehead by parents who came up just for her. When Nadine graduated high school as valedictorian, nobody from Mississippi came. When she graduated nursing school at 23, nobody came. When she married Brandon, her mother sent a card. When she got her hysterectomy at 28, she told no one, because she already knew the answer she'd get. Poor Nadine, the one nobody kept. The next morning, she went to work, Grady Memorial Hospital, the hospice ward on the 4th floor. 16 years of holding hands that were leaving the world. 16 years of being the last face strangers saw. That afternoon, she sat beside a woman named Mrs. Patterson, 78 years old, stage 4 ovarian cancer. No family had visited in 9 days. Mrs. Patterson's voice was paper-thin. "Nurse Washington, do you have children?" "No, ma'am." The old woman's hand tightened weakly around Nadine's. "It's not too late, baby. You don't need to give birth to be a mother. You just need to be willing to love a child who didn't come from your body." Nadine couldn't speak for a moment. "Ma'am, I just signed my divorce yesterday." Mrs. Patterson smiled, weak but certain. "Then God's already made room. Don't waste it." She died 46 minutes later, holding Nadine's hand. That night, Nadine opened her laptop. She typed, "Adoption, Atlanta, requirements, single woman." She read until 3 a.m. Older children, the website said. Sibling groups, special needs, children with trauma histories, children nobody else would take. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just read. She had $412 in checking. She had $800 in savings. She had a one-bedroom apartment with a yellow room that hadn't been opened in 8 years. She filled out the first form at 3:47 a.m. Under reason for adoption, she wrote, "Because I know what it feels like to be the child nobody chose, and I refuse to let another child carry that feeling if I can help it." 4 miles away, in a brick building called St. Bridget's Home for Children, 2 7-year-old twins were lying awake in twin beds. Naomi, in the bed beside her brother, whispered, "They didn't pick us again today." "I know. That's 3 families." Silence. Then Naomi turned her face to the wall. "Maybe we should stop hoping. It's not a useful emotion." Elijah didn't answer, but in the dark between the 2 beds, a small hand reached across the gap and found another small hand. They didn't speak. They didn't cry. They just held on. Saturday morning, October. Atlanta wrapped in that thin gold light that fools you into thinking the day will be gentle. Nadine drove her 1998 Honda Civic out to the edge of the city. The paperwork on the passenger seat had been signed and re-signed for 2 weeks. Eleanor Hayes, her supervisor at Grady, had vouched for her in writing. The home study was scheduled for next month. Today was just a meeting, just to see the children. That's what they always told her at hospice, too. Just to see. It was never just to see. St. Bridget's Home for Children was a red brick building with white shutters and a small playground out back. Built in 1962, run by a board of retired school teachers and one woman who'd been working there for 30 years and still came in on Sundays. Ms. Whitaker met Nadine at the door, 60-something, tall, white, hair pulled back in the same gray bun she'd probably worn since the Reagan administration. She had kind eyes and a tired smile. "Mrs. Washington, please, come in." The waiting room smelled like floor wax and crayon. Nadine sat across from Whitaker's desk and folded her hands the way she folded them at hospice. Calm, quiet, listening. Whitaker opened a thin manila folder and slid a pair of reading glasses onto her nose. "Mrs. Washington, before I take you through the children, I need to be honest with you. We have 23 kids currently available for adoption in this building. Based on your application, single, first-time mother, no prior experience with special needs, I'd like to introduce you to 2 specific children today. A 4-year-old girl named Lily and a 6-year-old boy named Caleb. Both sweet, both verbal. Both have bonded easily with prospective parents during previous visits." Nadine nodded slowly. "Can I see all the children first? Just walk through the room?" Whitaker hesitated, glanced at the folder, then nodded. She led Nadine down a long hallway and into the main playroom. There were 14 children in that room. 12 of them looked up when the two adults walked in. 2 of them didn't. Nadine saw Lily first, exactly as described. A bright little girl with 2 ponytails and a marker in each hand, drawing rainbows on butcher paper. Lily looked up, smiled wide, waved. Then Caleb, building a Lego tower in the corner. He grinned at Nadine like she was already his. Easy choices. Beautiful choices. Children who would heal a broken 36-year-old heart in a single afternoon. But Nadine's eyes were already drifting toward the far corner of the room. 2 children sat together on a wooden bench by the window. A boy and a girl. Identical jawlines, identical dark eyes, same hair, same nose, same serious mouth. Twins, maybe 7 years old. The boy was reading a paperback book about quantum mechanics for children. The girl was reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Neither one looked up when the adults walked in. Neither one moved as Nadine took a step closer. The boy passed a small folded piece of paper to the girl. She read it, nodded once, passed it back. Not a single word spoken between them. Nadine stopped breathing for a second. She turned to Whitaker, voice low. "Who are those 2? Whitaker's tired smile tightened at the edges. "Mrs. Washington, I really don't recommend it, not for a first-time parent. Tell me anyway." Whitaker sighed and lowered her voice. "Naomi and Elijah, 7 years old, twins. Their mother, Crystal, was 19 when she had them. She passed 2 years after giving birth. Complications from postpartum eclampsia. She never got treated. The maternal grandparents refused custody when Crystal died. She was already estranged from them. The biological father has never legally acknowledged the children. He's been contacted 3 times. Each time, he didn't reply." Nadine's voice stayed level. "Why hasn't anyone adopted them?" Whitaker looked at her, and for the first time, the tired smile cracked. 3 families have tried. 3 families have come and gone in 18 months. Each one stayed an average of 9 weeks before giving the children back. Why did they leave? Because Naomi and Elijah don't respond, Mrs. Washington. They don't cry, they don't smile, they don't say, "I love you." They don't hug. The IQ tests put both of them above 145. These are gifted children. But emotionally, they're... Whitaker searched for the word. Flat. Frozen. Our staff psychologist calls it trauma-related affective suppression. We've tried therapy. The therapist quit after 4 months. He said he'd never had a client laugh at his interpretation of grief. Nadine watched the twins from across the room. Naomi turned a page. Elijah turned a page 2 seconds later. Whitaker continued, softer. Most adoptive parents want to feel loved back, Mrs. Washington. These 2, they don't give that. They don't have it to give. And I won't lie to you. In 60 days, they'll age out of this facility and be transferred to a long-term state home. By state regulation, twins are not housed in the same room past age 8. Nadine turned slowly. They'll be separated. Yes. On their 8th birthday. Yes. Nadine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, very softly, the same thing she'd written on her application at 3:47 in the morning. I want to meet them. Whitaker walked Nadine across the playroom slowly, the way you'd approach a deer at the edge of a clearing. Naomi, Elijah, this is Mrs. Washington. She'd like to talk to you. Naomi looked up first. Dark eyes, calm, no fear, no curiosity, just observation. Like Nadine was a math problem she was deciding whether to solve. Elijah looked up a beat later, slower, more careful. Nadine didn't tower over them. She didn't crouch with that fake brightness adults use on children. She sat down on the floor, cross-legged, so her eyes were level with theirs. Hi. Silence. Naomi finally spoke in a voice flat and even. What for? Not hostile, just a real question. To find out what you like. Elijah, still not looking directly at her. Do you know the Schrödinger equation? Nadine almost laughed. She caught it before it came out. No, but I know how to make chicken soup with half a can of Campbell's and half a can of corn. I don't think that skill is worth as much as quantum physics, but it's gotten me through some hard days. Naomi and Elijah exchanged a look. It lasted half a second. To anyone else in the room, it would have been nothing, but Whitaker, who'd been watching these kids for 18 months, froze, because she'd never seen them agree about an adult before. Naomi tilted her head 1 degree. What kind of hard days? Nadine thought about lying, decided not to. The kind where I was your age and my mom put me on a bus to live with my grandma, and nobody came back to get me. Elijah finally looked at her, directly, for the first time. How old were you? 5. A pause. We were 5 when our mom died, Naomi said. I know. And nobody came for us either. I know that too. Silence. Then Elijah, quietly. Are you here because you feel sorry for us? The whole room seemed to lean in. Nadine answered without thinking. No, I'm here because I don't want to walk past you. There's a difference. The twins exchanged another look. Longer this time. 2 seconds. Nadine stood up slowly, brushed off her jeans, looked at Whitaker. I'd like to apply for both of them. Back in Whitaker's office, the kindness in the director's face was gone, replaced with the careful expression of someone who'd watched this movie 3 times already and knew exactly how it ended. Mrs. Washington, please listen to me carefully. You just divorced. You live alone. You work shifts. These children require specialized educational intervention, behavioral therapy, neurological monitoring, and a kind of patience that breaks most parents inside of a year. I have a stack of applications from couples with 2 incomes who've also been turned down for these 2. I can place you with Lily and Caleb today. Today, Mrs. Washington. You could take a child home this afternoon. Nadine listened. She didn't interrupt. When Whitaker finished, Nadine spoke quietly. Ms. Whitaker, you said 3 families came and went. Yes. Did any of them give you a reason that wasn't about themselves? Whitaker opened her mouth, closed it. No, ma'am. Then those weren't families. Those were people looking for an experience. I'm not looking for an experience. I'm looking for my children. Whitaker stared at her for a long moment. Then she opened a drawer, pulled out a thicker folder, slid it across the desk. 60 days, Mrs. Washington. Home study, financial review, background check, 2 psychological evaluations, and a temporary placement period before final adoption. If you complete every step in 60 days, the twins are yours. If you fail 1, even 1, they go to the state. Nadine pulled the folder toward herself. Where do I sign? The next 60 days were a war. She sold her wedding ring at a pawn shop on Memorial Drive. $380. She used it to buy 2 twin beds, 2 star-shaped nightlights, and 12 second-hand books from Goodwill. She painted the yellow room. White this time. A clean white. She borrowed 200 more from Eleanor Hayes and didn't tell Eleanor what it was really for, because the social worker had said her 1-bedroom apartment was too small for 3 people and she needed deposit money for a bigger place. She picked up double shifts, day shift at Grady, then 5-hour evening shifts at a nursing home in Decatur. She slept 4 hours a night. She lost 6 pounds. The first home visit, a social worker named Mrs. Coleman walked through Nadine's apartment with a clipboard and asked questions that felt like accusations. "And how do you plan to afford specialized therapy on a single nurse's income?" "I've spoken with the social work department at Grady. They've offered a sliding scale referral." "And childcare during your shifts?" "My supervisor has agreed to rearrange my schedule so I work while the children are at school." "And if one of them has a medical emergency?" "Ma'am, I'm a nurse. I've handled emergencies for 16 years. Mrs. Coleman wrote something down, said nothing. 2 weeks later, Nadine was denied. Insufficient financial stability for 2 special needs children. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she filed an appeal, walked it into the county office herself, spent her lunch break sitting in the waiting room. Eleanor wrote a letter. Pastor Wallace Johnson wrote a letter. The hospice chaplain wrote a letter. Mrs. Patterson's adult daughter, who'd never met Nadine but had heard about her from the hospital, wrote a letter. Round 2 of review. Approved. Conditionally. Day 58. Day 59. On day 60, Nadine drove the Honda back to St. Bridget's with 2 small backpacks on the passenger seat. Whitaker met her at the door, held out a hand. Nadine shook it. The twins were waiting in the playroom, each holding one possession from their old life, a black leather notebook. Just one each, nothing else. Whitaker bent down. "Naomi, Elijah, it's time." They stood up. In the car on the way home, Nadine talked the whole way about the white room, about the books on the shelf, about the menu she'd planned for the weekend, about the small potted plant on the windowsill she'd named Stanley. The twins didn't respond. They sat in the back seat holding their notebooks. When they reached the apartment, Nadine opened the door to their room. 2 beds, 2 starlights, a row of books, Stanley, the plant. Elijah walked in first, stopped, looked at the bed nearest the window, touched the blanket, just barely, like he was testing whether it was real. Then he turned around. "Ma'am, are you going to send us away?" Nadine's knees buckled. She knelt down in front of him, eye level, the way she had at the orphanage. "My name is Nadine, and from today on, you can call me Mom, or you can call me Nadine. You can take your time, but no, nobody is sending you away. Not ever. Not while I'm breathing." Elijah didn't cry, didn't smile, but he did not take his hand off that blanket for 10 minutes. And Naomi, silent Naomi, walked over and stood beside her brother and reached out and held the corner of the blanket too. Like they were both checking the same thing, that something soft this time was going to stay. The first week was quiet in a way Nadine had never experienced. Naomi and Elijah moved through the apartment like polite tenants. They ate breakfast at the table, washed their own dishes, folded their own laundry, returned to their books. They said yes ma'am and no ma'am in voices so even they could have been reading from a printed menu. Naomi called Nadine ma'am for 3 weeks. Elijah called her ma'am for 2 months. Nadine didn't correct them. She just kept showing up. She cooked breakfast every morning, pancakes on Saturdays, oatmeal on weekdays. She read aloud to them at bedtime even when they didn't react. She left the door to their room cracked open at night so they could see her shadow walking the hallway. She didn't push. She didn't perform. She just stayed. The black leather notebooks went with them everywhere. Naomi carried hers in her backpack to school. Elijah kept his under his pillow. They wrote in them every night before bed, shoulders hunched, pens scratching in the dark. Nadine noticed. She didn't ask. One Saturday morning, Naomi left hers on the kitchen table by accident. Nadine picked it up, held it for a long second, and put it back down without opening a single page. Eleanor Hayes, hearing the story over coffee at the hospital later that week, asked her why. Nadine said, "Because it's the only thing of theirs that survived." I'm not going to be the second person in this world to take something from them. On Sundays, she took them to Piedmont Park. The wooden bench by the lake became their classroom. Nadine made up a game. She'd point at strangers walking by and they'd try to read the emotion. That man, happy. See his shoulders? Loose. That woman, anxious. Watch her eyes. For the first 4 Sundays, the twins watched silently, took notes in their notebooks, said nothing. On the 5th Sunday, Naomi pointed at an elderly woman walking slowly across the grass with a small bag of groceries. That one. Tired, but not sad. Why? Nadine smiled. Because maybe she's walking home to someone she loves. Naomi nodded once, the kind of nod that meant information received, integrated, filed. It was the first time Naomi had asked instead of answered. The first time Naomi called Nadine Mom came 8 weeks after the adoption. Elijah ran a fever in the night. Naomi knocked on Nadine's bedroom door at 3 in the morning. Her voice was still flat, still even, but something was breaking at the edges. Mom? Elijah isn't okay. Nadine didn't pause to register the word. She moved. She ran to the boy's room, put her hand on Elijah's forehead, burning, wrapped him in a blanket, carried him to the car, drove to Grady through empty streets. At the hospital, the doctor pulled her aside. Viral. He'll be fine. You did the right thing bringing him in. In the waiting room, Naomi sat beside her. After a long silence, Naomi placed her small hand on top of Nadine's. She didn't squeeze. She didn't speak. She just kept it there for nearly an hour. That was when Nadine knew. They had chosen her back. A week later, Nadine sat on the edge of the bed between Naomi and Elijah while they slept. She stroked Naomi's hair. She placed her hand on Elijah's chest the way she always did. She whispered, too quietly for them to hear, she thought. My babies, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I only know I will never let anyone in this world touch you. I promise you that. I promise it with everything I have. But the twins weren't asleep. They lay still. They didn't move. They didn't open their eyes. Across the dark space between their beds, 2 small hands found each other and held on. They had heard everything, and they would remember. 3 months later, the twins turned 8. Nadine baked a cake, chocolate, 2 layers, slightly lopsided. She put 8 candles on it and lit them with hands that shook a little, not from nerves, but from how badly she wanted this small moment to land right. Naomi blew out 4. Elijah blew out 4. They each said, "Thank you, Mom," in voices that were almost normal now. Almost. That night, after the cake was cut and the kitchen was clean, Nadine walked past their room and saw something she had never seen before. The twins were sitting cross-legged on the floor, heads bent over the same black leather notebook. Their voices were low, urgent. Naomi was sketching something. Elijah was writing numbers beside it. When Nadine appeared in the doorway, Elijah closed the notebook, gently but quickly. Nadine smiled, didn't ask, walked away. But she paused in the hallway and listened. Naomi's voice very quiet. How many years? Elijah, even quieter. At least 15, maybe 20. We have to be patient. Nadine kept walking. The years went by in the way years do when a mother is working 2 shifts and a child is reading 3 grade levels ahead. Naomi skipped 5th grade, then 7th. Elijah won the regional science fair at 10, the state fair at 11, a national competition at 12. His prize money, $3,400, went straight into a savings account Nadine didn't know existed. Naomi entered her first debate tournament at 11, won. Entered the state mock trial at 12, won again. By 13, she was the youngest registered participant at the Georgia High School Moot Court Championships. Her trophies were small. Her bank account was not. Nadine asked once, when Naomi was 12, what she was saving for. Naomi looked up from her homework, considered the question carefully, then said, "For something Mom doesn't know about yet." She smiled when she said it, a real smile, small but real. Nadine smiled back and didn't push. The notebooks multiplied. By the time Naomi was 13, there were 5 of them on a shelf in the closet, labeled in Elijah's small, exact handwriting. Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, Year 4, Year 5. Each book sealed with a rubber band. None of them ever opened in front of Nadine. None of them ever offered for her to read. She didn't ask. She had decided years earlier that the notebooks belonged to them. Whatever they were building inside those pages was not hers to know. Not yet. But somewhere, deep in a part of her she didn't examine too closely, she knew this. Her children were planning something, and whatever it was, she was at the center of it. When the twins were 8 years and 4 months old, the apartment building where they lived turned into a war zone Nadine hadn't seen coming. It started small, the kind of small that adults wave off and children remember forever. Nadine had rented a 3rd-floor unit in a 4-story brick walk-up in East Atlanta. Working class, mixed black and white tenants, the kind of building where everyone knew each other's footsteps. When the twins moved in, the looks started. They were biracial, lighter-skinned than Nadine, pale gray eyes, quiet in a way that made strangers uncomfortable. They didn't run in the courtyard. They didn't play with the other kids. They carried books that were too thick for their hands. And on the 2nd floor, in apartment 2B, lived a 64-year-old white woman named Mrs. Beatrice Hollings. Beatrice had opinions about everything. She cornered the grocer at the corner store first, then the mailman, then anyone who would listen. That black nurse upstairs, the one in 3C, did you see what she brought home? 2 biracial kids, cold as fish, both of them. I'm telling you, it runs in the genes. Their birth mother must have been one of those drug-addicted girls. Why else would she dump them? Marlon Davis, Nadine's neighbor across the hall, told her in the doorway one evening. Nadine listened, thanked him, offered coffee. He declined. She closed the door. She didn't tell the twins. She just kept saying good morning to Beatrice in the elevator. Kept smiling first. Kept the children inside on Saturdays when she heard Beatrice's voice in the hallway. She rearranged her routines so her children never walked past that woman alone. Some battles, Nadine had learned long ago, you win by not playing. But Naomi and Elijah were geniuses, and geniuses notice everything. It happened on a Saturday in late March. Nadine had picked up an early morning shift, 6 a.m. to noon. The twins were home alone, old enough now with Marlon Davis keeping his door cracked open across the hall. That morning, the twins went downstairs to check the mailbox. The hallway was empty, but apartment 2B's door was cracked open, and Beatrice's voice carried, sharp, loud, the way people talk on phones when they think no one is listening. She thinks taking in 2 biracial kids is going to make her a mother? I'm telling you, Carol, one more generation and this building turns into a slum. I already told Greta, we should never have rented to people like that. Black, single, can't even bear her own, so she goes collecting somebody else's. Naomi went still. Elijah felt something he had never felt in his 8 years of conscious memory. Anger. Real anger. The kind that comes from somewhere older than yourself. He pushed the door open. Beatrice spun around, phone still pressed to her ear, her face flushed red. "What are you 2 doing in my apartment?" Elijah's voice came out flat, precise. 8 years old, sounding 30. "Ma'am, I heard you. My mother did not collect us. She chose us after 3 other families said no. That is data, not opinion." Naomi stepped in beside him. "And on your point about genetics, that's pseudoscience. Intelligence has a heritability coefficient between 40 and 80% depending on the study, but there is no peer-reviewed evidence for the inheritance of coldness as you described it. You are confusing correlation with causation. Beatrice's mouth fell open. Then her face went a deeper red. You little! Who taught you to talk to an adult like that? Our mother. Your mother? Our mother is the one you are not allowed to talk about that way, Naomi said. Beatrice stood up, 64 years old, heavy hand. She'd hit children when she was young, and the muscle memory was still there. She raised her arm. I will teach you how to talk to a grown woman. And at that exact moment, the elevator at the end of the hallway opened. Nadine stepped out, still in her hospice scrubs, tired the way only a 6-hour shift on the dying ward can make you. She saw, in less than 1 second, her 2 children in a stranger's doorway and an old white woman's hand raised in the air. She did not think. She crossed 20 feet in 4 strides and put her own body between Beatrice and her children, arms out, wide, shielding. Mrs. Hollings, you do not touch my children. Beatrice's hand was still up, embarrassed now, caught, and that embarrassment turned ugly. Greta, she shouted. Greta, come out here! The door to 2A opened. Mrs. Greta Hollings, Beatrice's older sister, 67, the landlord, the woman whose signature was on Nadine's lease, stepped out in a housecoat. She listened to Beatrice's version for 30 seconds. She didn't ask the twins anything. She didn't ask Nadine anything. She walked up to Nadine, drew her hand back, and slapped her hard across the face. Nadine staggered into the wall. A clean, dry crack echoed down the corridor. Her lip split. A drop of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. Naomi and Elijah froze, did not move, did not breathe. Greta's voice was steady, cold, practiced. You and your 2 have 30 days to be out of my building. Don't bother calling the police. I'll tell them you came at my sister first. Who do you think they'll believe? A divorced black nurse? Or 2 sisters who've lived in this building 40 years? She turned, walked back into 2A, closed the door. Beatrice followed, closed 2B. The hallway was silent. Nadine stood there with her hand on her cheek. Then she looked at her children. Come on, babies. Let's go upstairs. She did not cry in front of them. Not in the elevator, not in the apartment. She filled the bathtub, laid out their pajamas, sent them to wash up. She walked into the kitchen, pressed a dish towel against her mouth, and only then, with the sound of running water covering everything, did Nadine Washington finally let her shoulders shake. The twins did not go to bed that night. They sat in their pajamas on the edge of Elijah's bed, side by side, listening through the wall. They heard Nadine in the kitchen for a long time. They heard her run the faucet too long. They heard her clear her throat the way she did when she was trying to make her voice sound normal. When Nadine finally came in to say goodnight, she was smiling. She kissed Naomi's forehead, put a hand on Elijah's chest the way she always did. Sleep, my loves. We're okay. She turned off the light and left the door cracked open. Naomi waited until she heard Nadine's bedroom door close. Then she slid out of bed, pulled the notebook from under her pillow, sat cross-legged on the floor. Elijah climbed down beside her. She handed him the pen. Elijah wrote, in the careful printing of a child trying hard to spell everything right. Today our mother got hit because of us. She did not cry in front of us because she thought we would not see. We saw. We will remember. When we are older, no one will hit her again. No one will speak about her like that again. We will build her a place where only good people are allowed inside. Naomi read it, nodded once, took the pen and signed her name beneath his. They climbed into Elijah's bed. They slept in the same bed that night for the first time since they were 5 years old. Nadine went to the police station the next morning. She filed a report. Her face was swollen. The officer who took her statement was polite but tired. He typed her account into a form. He asked if there were any adult witnesses. There weren't. Greta denied everything. Beatrice corroborated her sister. 2 white women in their 60s, 1 black single mother in scrubs. The report was filed. No charges were pursued. The officer told her, almost apologetically, that she had 30 days and that staying was probably not advisable. Nadine thanked him, walked home, did not tell the twins. That afternoon, she started calling apartments. She was rejected 11 times in 14 days. Some landlords told her the unit had just been rented. Others stopped returning her calls after she said her name. One man in Decatur told her on the phone, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we just had some issues with previous tenants and the owner has decided to be more selective." Nadine knew what that meant. She didn't argue. She just kept dialing. To make the doubled security deposit she'd need, she picked up overtime at a nursing home in Stone Mountain. 4 hours every evening after her hospice shift. She slept 4 hours a night. Her hands developed small bruises, corners of cabinets, edges of beds. The price of being too tired to see where you're moving. Every morning when she came home, the twins were already awake. Naomi had learned to use the coffee maker. Elijah laid the bread on the table. "Mom, do you need us to stop going to school to help?" Nadine almost laughed through her exhaustion. "No, baby. Your job is to learn. My job is to work. That's the right equation." Elijah answered with her own words. "That equation is temporary. We will write a new one." She didn't understand what he meant. She was too tired to ask. On day 29, Eleanor Hayes introduced Nadine to a Greek-American landlord in Decatur named Mr. Heiress. His late wife had been a nurse. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't double the deposit. He let her sign the lease that afternoon. The new apartment was smaller. The hallway was narrower. The neighbors were quieter. That first night, Nadine fell asleep on the couch folding laundry. The twins covered her with a blanket. Naomi turned off the lamp. Elijah opened the notebook, wrote one more line under the promise from a month earlier. Day 29. Mom won, but she paid too much. Next equation, how do we make sure she never pays like this again? The years did what years do. Nadine kept the double shifts longer than she should have. The bruises from the move faded. New ones never quite stopped appearing, on her wrists, her hips, the side of her foot. She wore long sleeves to work even in July. When the twins turned 12, they were already 2 grades ahead. By 13, 3. By 15, the notebooks under Elijah's bed had multiplied to 11, each one labeled by year, each one filled with diagrams, equations, draft business plans, sketches, each one with the same line written at the bottom of every single page. Mom doesn't know yet. When they turned 16, 2 letters arrived on the same Wednesday. MIT, Summer Research Program. Accepted. Full scholarship. Elijah Washington. Harvard Pre-Law Summer Institute. Accepted. Full scholarship. Naomi Washington. Nadine read both letters twice at the kitchen table. Her hands shook so hard the paper rattled. Elijah did something he had never done in 9 years. He walked around the table and hugged her. He didn't know where to put his arms. They ended up stiff and crooked across her shoulders, but he didn't let go for 12 seconds. Naomi didn't hug. She just placed one hand on her mother's shoulder. 2 years later, the official acceptances arrived. Full scholarships. MIT Computer Science for Elijah, Harvard Law School early admission for Naomi. Naomi spoke first at the kitchen table that night, quietly. "Mom, You won't have to work the night shift anymore. Nadine smiled the smile she'd smiled for 10 years. Baby, I work nights because I like it. Elijah looked at her, direct. Mom, we've heard you whispering to yourself every Sunday night since we were 7 years old. We know you don't like it. The equation is going to change soon. Nadine laughed, patted his hand. She had no idea he was making her a promise. The twins left for college in late August. Boston was cold and far and full of brick. They called home every Sunday at 7 p.m. 20 minutes, sometimes 30. Freshman year, they talked about classes. Sophomore year, about professors. Junior year, the calls got shorter. Mom, I have a project. Mom, I can't make it home for Thanksgiving. Senior year, the calls were 10 minutes, sometimes 7. Nadine didn't complain. She told herself they were becoming adults, that this was the whole point. But on some Sunday nights after she hung up, she sat on the couch in her small apartment in Decatur and felt something she hadn't felt in 20 years. The feeling of being 5 years old on a Greyhound bus, watching her mother get smaller through a window. She didn't tell anyone. She just made tea and went to bed. The twins graduated in May. Naomi at Harvard Law, Elijah at MIT. Nadine flew up. 2 ceremonies in 2 days. She cried harder than either twin did, which made Naomi laugh, which made Elijah almost laugh, which made Nadine cry harder. At dinner that night, in a pizza place in Cambridge, the twins told her they were moving back to Atlanta. They had a small project to work on. What kind of project? You'll see, Mom, soon. She let it go. They moved back. They rented an apartment together. They did not move in with her. For 6 months, Nadine saw her children for 90 minutes every Sunday. They came over. They ate dinner. They washed dishes. They left. She tried to give them money. They refused. She offered to visit their apartment. They declined. She asked 3 times what they were working on. They smiled, small smiles, real ones, and said, "Almost ready, Mom." Nadine started to wonder if she had finally lost them. She didn't say it out loud. She just kept making Sunday dinner. On a Saturday morning in October, her phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. Mom, today, 11 a.m. Wear the blue dress. A car will come. Don't ask questions. Trust me. Nadine put on the blue dress, brushed her hair, looked in the mirror and saw a woman of 61, 2 strands of gray, hands of a nurse. The car arrived at 10:45. It drove her downtown, past Peachtree, past the buildings she had cleaned as a side job 20 years ago, on the weekends she didn't tell the twins about. The car stopped on a block in Midtown Atlanta. 2 glass towers stood side by side, 8 stories each, both wrapped in red fabric. A small crowd, maybe 60 people. Local news, a few city officials. And at the front, standing on the sidewalk in matching dark suits, were Elijah and Naomi, waiting for her. Nadine stepped out of the car. Naomi walked over, took her right hand. Elijah took her left. Naomi leaned in close, whispered, "Mom, do you remember the bench at Piedmont Park?" Nadine turned her head. Across one narrow street, through a gap between buildings, was Piedmont Park. The wooden bench, still there. Elijah quietly, "We picked this lot because the conference room windows on the 8th floor looked directly at that bench. We decided that when we were 7. Nadine's knees almost gave out. The twins handed her 2 thin cords. Naomi, "Pull, Mom." Nadine pulled the left cord first. The fabric dropped. Washington Technologies. In brushed steel letters, 3 feet tall. Underneath, founded by Elijah Washington in honor of Nadine Washington, the woman who taught us how to feel. Nadine made a small sound. Her hand went to her mouth. The right cord. She pulled. Washington Law Group, founded by Naomi Washington, dedicated to Nadine Washington, who chose us when she didn't have to. The crowd applauded. Nadine heard none of it. She turned to her children. Tears were running down her face, but she wasn't sobbing. She was just leaking, the way an old wound finally does when someone presses gently on it for the first time. "Why my name? Why not yours?" Elijah answered. And for the first time in 25 years of being her son, his voice cracked. "Because Washington isn't the name we were born with, Mom. It's the name you gave us. And it's the only name we ever wanted to keep." "Naomi, come inside, Mom. Come inside your house." They walked Nadine into Washington Technologies first. The lobby was glass and pale wood, a wall of black and white photographs, not celebrities, not investors, children. Quiet children with the same faraway look Naomi and Elijah had carried into St. Bridget's 25 years ago. Elijah led her to a glass case in the center. "Mom, this is our first product. We call it Piedmont." The screen showed faces, a smiling face, a worried face, a face mid-laughter. Underneath each, the name of the emotion. Around each, "He might feel this way because..." You can respond by saying, Nadine touched the glass. "This is what you did for us, Mom. On the bench every Sunday. For 16 years. We ship it free to schools that can't afford it. 12,000 units this year. 340 schools." Naomi was already walking her into Washington Law Group. Past the intake desk, down a short hallway, they stopped in front of a door with a small plaque. Tenant Protection Division. Naomi's voice went soft. "Mom, we represent tenants who get pushed out by landlords because of their skin color, marital status, or kids. We don't charge them. We pulled the file on Greta Hollings. She passed away 4 years ago. We didn't sue anyone. We just built the door she used to slam and made sure other women can walk through it now and not get hit." Nadine put her hand on the doorframe. She didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was very small. "Naomi, you were 8. I was 8, Mom. And I remember everything." They took her up to the 8th floor. On Elijah's desk, 16 black leather notebooks stacked in chronological order. Naomi opened the first one, the careful printing of a 7-year-old. "When we grow up, we will find a way so she does not work the night shift anymore." The 5th notebook, age 12. The first sketch of Piedmont. The 11th. "We are not leaving her. We are going to get the tools to come back for her." The 16th, last month. Opening day, October. Mom wears the blue dress. Don't tell her. Naomi slid a folder across the desk. "Mom, 30% of both companies, chairwoman of the advisory board, a house in Buckhead, deed in your name, and a small hospice center on the east side. Yours to run or yours to leave alone." Elijah leaned forward. "Mom, you don't have to do anything, but everything in this building is yours." Naomi knelt down beside her mother, eye level, the same way Nadine had knelt for them 25 years ago, in a small apartment with a freshly painted white room. "Mom, you're done with the night shift. Forever." 5 years later, Washington Technologies and Washington Law Group operate in 12 cities. Every building carries the same line, "In honor of Nadine Washington." On the 25th anniversary of the adoption, Nadine walks to the bench at Piedmont Park. A young black mother is teaching her daughter to read emotions on passing strangers. A young man wearing a Tenant Protection Division lanyard bumps into Nadine, apologizes, asks if she's all right. He has no idea the name on his lanyard is hers. She smiles. "I'm better than all right, son. You go on. So let me ask you, who chose you when nobody else did? Tell me their name in the comments.
The story is over. But honestly, it's not really about the buildings. Most people meet this spot. Nadine didn't love your twin because she wanted children. She adopted them because she understood that feeling. When she was 5, she sat on that same car Greyhound bus, and nobody ever came back for her. So, when she walked into that orphanage and saw 2 kids in a corner nobody wanted to walk to God, she walked to God them. That's what gets me. The people who change a child's life are usually the ones who work on that child themselves. And here's the second thing. Nadine didn't do anything dramatic. No big speeches. She just showed up. Breakfast every morning, books at bedtime, Sunday at the park. For 16 years, quietly, but the twins were watching. They wrote it all down. Every shape, every bruise their mama hit with long sleeves in July. They saw everything. So here's what I keep thinking. Kids don't remember the big speeches. They remember who showed up when nobody else did. And one day, when they have the power, they pay it back. So let me ask you, who chose you when nobody else did? A grandma, a teacher, a neighbor? Type your name into comment. I read everyone. Hit like so this reaches a mama who needs to hear it tonight. Subscribe. Next week's story. I can't stop thinking about it. I will see you in the next time.